This is a new class, and many of you might not know in person, although I'm sure that most of you might have read about or read the texts of Vladislav Inozemtsev, because the Russian intellectual school is not particularly numerous, but because Vladislav Inozemtsev, an expert and friend of the school, is one of the unique representatives of the Russian intellectual milieu. He has always been and has always succeeded in combining an interest to the global intellectual space, bringing it together with the Russian reality and representing this Russian reality through the prism of the historical, indeed global analysis. His texts and presentations are very interesting and important to all those who are interested in the Russian development and the general development trends. He is and he has been a very well-known expert who works very well. This is something that only he does. He alone is an institution. We are dealing with enlightenment, and he is, as an individual, as a human, an institution, because for his own money and at his own expense, he translates and publishes works which make up the great essence of the current day contemporary English language thought. He is a man publishing company. He is a person who has brought to the attention of the Russian reading public the classics of the Anglo-Saxon intellectual school, and when Mr. Inozemtsev conducts an interview with them, this is indeed a dialogue that he has with his equals. We are very proud for Mr. Inozemtsev not just to be a part of our seminars in Golitsyno, but also visits our regional seminars, which is indeed extremely valuable. He has brought to the school, he has invited the former governor of the Krasnoyarsk region, Mr. Zubov, deputy of the State Duma, who is very well reputed and known. I know of two experts of this school who are very important, Mr. Inozemtsev and Mr. Alexei Makarkin, whom you also might know from the seminar of June. These two experts have written a book together. They have co-authored a book with Mr. Zubov. This is his first visit to the school, and I think that this is quite meaningful for the school. I hope this will be mutual. Thank you. Thank you, Lena, for this very kind introduction. Let me say that it is indeed not true that I have invited Valery Mikhailovich. He has come here as a person who indeed has seeded interest in the Siberian problems, who has taken my genuine interest in Siberia to a new level, to the development of its current days and its future. And indeed, he is one of our first co-authors. And he indeed knows this subject much better than I do. But for the past 2 years, we have tried to combine our efforts to offer a more optimistic scenario for the development of Russian regions and trying to use the strategy of the reform in this region as a strategy for the entire country. Today we have decided that I will express in a short statement some of the our arguments which were put in the basis of our work, which will be sold here, and Valery Mikhailovich will tell us more and will tell us about his view of our common work. I will not be praising myself or indeed this country, but what I shall try to do is to express some arguments which may seem provocative and challenging, and hopefully which are can be well understood to form the basis for our future work. If we treat this from a historical and a methodological view, Russia may well be viewed as a strange conglomerate of two huge territories, Moscovia and Siberia. In the history of European powers, Russia is a European power, both by its spirit, by its values, by its history. But in the history of European powers, colonization was one of the forms of territorial and cultural expansion, and it occurred as we witness in the history of major European countries in almost a simultaneous way. If you look at the discoveries of Columbus, the colonization of South America by the Spanish and the Portuguese, and the expansion of the English and French in North America, and the eastward expansion of Muscovy, which these are almost simultaneous events in the 15th and 16th century. And if you look at the major largest cities in the Siberian plains and in North America, we can see that many of these major metropolitan cities were founded at almost the same time. Unfortunately, the colonization of these territories, including North America, South America, and Siberia, were generally not generous towards the Aborigines peoples. And the economy in these regions was quite monocultural and was hardly related to the actual specifics of the territories per se. However, the major difference of Russia from other European powers was and is that the European empires were soon to lose their colonies. What do I mean by saying colonies? colony is in no way a derogatory term in my statement, but just a certain nomination of a territory where the metropolitan nation have a majority. This is what we see in Siberia, or the 13 colonies in the east of the current United States, the Quebec, Australia, New Zealand, where the representatives of the European nations, having arrived into these territories, curbed the local population, absorbed and assimilated these, and created the societies where the European nations, or the descendants of the European nations, formed the majority. I'm not talking about Zimbabwe, India, Indonesia, or any other European dominions which were quite different from the colonies per se. So, the major difference, the fundamental difference of Russia and Russia's historical path from the historical path of the European nations and the European empires is that the largest colony of Russia, from the Urals to Alaska, the largest territorial formation outside of Europe, was not lost by Russia and continues to be a part of the Russian state, as distinct from other European possessions which were gained later, such as Central Asia, the Caucasus, and Transcaucasia, which did not have such a high percentage of the Russians, and which were lost in 1991, alongside with many of the imperial possessions of the European nations. An interesting difference or specific of this is that, and we can see that today, the Moscow metropolitan state today, or Siberian part, is a lot more sound in economic terms than the metropolitan center. The only other analogy that can be brought from history is the relationship between Brazil and Portugal. When Brazil was a lot stronger, we know what ensued in this historical line when Brazil seceded from Portugal, founded the Brazilian Empire, and is now the 9th strongest economy in the world. What we continue to say is that the repetition of the Brazil-Portuguese model might be repeated. We have not and ever voted for separatism. We are not adherents or supporters of those who spoke about the Siberian independence. So we do not support any ideas about the subsequent federalization and the further federalization of Russia, but what we believe is that we all need to do is to pay due attention to the issues of Siberia and to say that the further gap between the past Urals, Russia, and the European part of Russia may become a catastrophe for this country, because we have to realize that 70% of Russia's exports come from Siberia, about 52% of the federal budget are filled in from Siberian and the Siberian mineral resources, and generally speaking, Russia today, without Siberia, and of course we mean by Siberia everything that starts from the area to the east of Urals to the Far East and Chukotka. If Moscow or the European country would have been selling goods only for the European part, then the general export of Russia would have been less than that of the Republic of Czechia. Several more circumstances that I would like to draw your attention to, which makes it so important, which I think are significantly important from the standpoint of modernization. The role of Siberia is important in several ways. Not only because we get part of our wealth from Siberia. The point is that today Siberia is a region which is most interested in modernization of the entire country. Under President Medvedev, and we discussed this many times in the school, the program of modernization of the Russian economy was under-realized or under-implemented for one fundamental reason, that being that this modernization was not in the focus of interest of the extraction industries. In that case, today the raw materials are mainly concentrated in Siberia, and if we succeed in managing this, and because the mineral resources provide the greatest cash flow for the modernization of the Russian economy, we are not naive to say, as President Medvedev did, we are not naive to say that the modernization of the Russian economy can go through the internet, through modern technologies, pharmaceuticals, computer, Skolkovo, and so on and so forth. The modernization of any major economy can only develop through competitive advantages. Today, our competitive advantages is cheap raw materials produced in large volumes and the ability to place major industrial productions in the vast Russian expenses, which might not be high tech, but still required against the background of the demands of the markets today. That is why we believe that the raw material sector, the extraction sector of the Russian economy will continue to dominate in this country for another several decades, and the stimulation of this sector for large-scale changes are such that we have to maximally increase the interest of these regions. So, in other words, we believe that Siberia may be the greatest industrial sector and follow us in terms of the use of the natural resources. In this version of modernization, it would be required to indeed shift major financial flows into the Siberian development. Today, the government does not seem to be doing this in any success, because while it is collecting the revenues, it then distributes it as taxes in the central regions of Russia, in the Caucasus and elsewhere. So in an objective way, only 10% goes back to the budgets of the Siberian regions. Our proposal in this sense was, and we are still adherent to this view, is that it would be expedient not to increase the revenues and to invest the surplus into Siberia, but to decrease the payments into the federal budget from the Siberian rents, and to redirect these cash flows alongside the channels of the development of the Siberian regions. However, the task here is to leave between 25 to 30% of the mineral rent in the Siberian region. This task is quite realistic. This can be done in several ways, but the effect from this change will be radical, both from the standpoint of Siberia and for Moscow, because in that same way we would be able to use and to decrease the burden from the federal budget and increase the modernization tendencies in this country. So, in other words, the center would be more interested in the development of a competitive economy, the development of private business, and less interested in the continuation of the extraction-based economy. In this sense, modernization of Siberia is of primary importance for Russia as a whole. Historically speaking, Siberia was developing as a place which was home for the most entrepreneurial, industrious, energetic people, people who had some entrepreneurial culture. Even today, Siberia is a special territory in this country from the standpoint of the natural resources, the climate, and these reasons, to me, apparently makes it quite natural to convert Siberia into a special economic territory. I am quite sure that many of the bans and limitations which are imposed on the Russian economy must not be extended to Siberia, so we should in every way encouraging the migration into Siberia from both the European part of Russia and from abroad. We must, in a maximum way, increase our involvement in the technological refurbishing of Siberia in the terms of all the extraction industries, the general easing of the administrative burdens, the construction of the airports, the development of infrastructure, and we are talking what we're talking about is that the Siberian region must become the new El Dorado of the Russian private business, which might become such a way out for the entrepreneurial energy which exists throughout Russia. Besides, we believe that Siberia must be viewed from the standpoint of the major federal projects, and many projects can be enumerated in the way which have been either abandoned or underinvested or undercompleted. We have to realize that the people who lived in these vast regions, and by the way, I have to contend that phrase or that viewpoint whereby Siberia is an underpopulated area. This is not quite true. Alaska has a third level in the United States by the level of life and the income, and the Russian Far East is tenfold less. So the underpopulation of the Russian Far East is definitely not the case. Mr. Yakunin's agency has 1 million people, and indeed it is not about the huge territories or underpopulation, but how technologically armed Russia beyond Ural is. So the important statement here is that Siberia may become the true source of the grassroots developments in this country, because what the Russian Federation needs today primarily is the understanding that the Soviet or Stalin's methods of development are not the only ones applicable in this land, in this country. Something that must be offered at the level of the regions. Let us take the Baikal-Amur Railroad or the modernization of, and even if all this money is spent effectively and the modernization of the BAM of the Baikal-Amur Railroad is completed, however, this will only, the Trans-Siberian Railroad and BAM carries about 100 million tons a year, of which major part is the coal and iron ore, which are taken to Vladivostok and then exported to Korea and Japan. Even the most advanced metalworks in Siberia could be in Ulan-Ude about much cheaper, would it not be proper to save $36 billion without making the renovation of the Bum Railroad and building the facilities which are required in Ulan-Ude, rather than building a railroad that leads nowhere? And there are many examples like that. Unfortunately, the federal government is only interested in pumping this money out of Siberia and spending the greatest part of the revenues for the bureaucratic apparatus. I think that only the regional and regions are the place where decisions must be taken, and in this sense Siberia is the true place for such very serious and destiny-changing experiments and modernization. My last statement is about the eastward expansion of the Russian economy, and in this sense Siberia will continue to play a pivotal role in the 21st century. Today, Siberia is the second part of Russia, which goes to the Pacific Ocean. If we do not develop Siberia and the Far East, Russia actually declines the history and the historical success of the United States, which indeed has shown how a power can attain greatness by relying itself on the two oceans as a bicoastal power, and with a relatively underdeveloped middle. But this eastward orientation does not mean the wedding with China, because if you look at the map, you will see that the east of Russia and the eastward channels, it is of course a way not only to China, Japan or Korea, but also, and more importantly, to the United States through the Pacific pathways to Canada. And indeed, in this sense, we might be a lot more interested in the Pacific Northern and Pacific experience of Canada and the United States than the Chinese experience, which in my view is quite irrelevant to the Siberian development. And in this sense, I do not think that Beijing would in any way be interested in the further technological modernization and development of Russia, Siberia, and Far East.
So the turn to the east is very important. It's not just that we have to unite Far East with Moscow. We have to develop internal infrastructure sufficient to develop Siberia and Far East. We need now a railway to Chukotka to connect it with the Northern America. We need an infrastructure of quality for local transportation, local car roads. We have to develop new seaways and seaports at the Pacific. Our border there is the longest in the world, but we developed about 1.5% comparing with other countries of the world. And I mean the cargo. Actually, one port of Shanghai processes more cargo than all our Pacific coast. So today 60% of global GDP is created in the regions which are far from the sea, less than 100 miles. Still, we try to establish relationships with the Central Asian countries, and we forget about our Pacific coast and our eastern industrial regions or districts. Presently, we catastrophically ignore our Siberia, and this should be rectified. Well-being of Siberians, well-being of Siberian model is extremely important for the existence of Russia as a state in the 21st century. The federal center nowadays is incapable of redistributing efficiently financial streams to the regions which truly require these streams. The only way is to change financial flows, to reorientate them. We have to use to the maximum entrepreneurial activity of Siberians and people who are ready to go there. This territory was a territory of economic freedom, and that's what it should be. Without the corresponding development in the Far East and the Pacific area, the Russian economy is doomed. Now we face sanctions from Europe, and we will understand pretty soon how vulnerable we are, and we have to reconsider all our relationships between Moscow and Siberia for the benefit of Moscow and Siberia, because these are two important and equal components for Russia. If this topic is of interest to you, we would be very glad, and we are open for any contacts and discussions on the subject matter. Valery Mikhailovich will continue in the topic. I have a comment before Valery speaks up. Of course, he is going to dwell upon the same subject, I know. But speaking about Moscow and Siberia and comparing it to Alaska, well, it seems to me that it's not only the issue of redistribution of funds from one region to another. As you think from Alaska, Moscow and Siberia has no independent courts, no proper municipal structures, no public control. Which is, of course, of great interest for Moscow and Siberia. Many authors think that raw material is a curse for democracy, and that Norway is the only country with its public control controls properly means of use for the target regions. So in our seminar we should talk not only about redistribution, but about what shall we do in general. This is a question, and Slava, I would ask you to answer me that later. Thank you for a chance to publicly discuss a number of ideas which we put on paper with Vladislav. Well, there were several mistakes in my introduction. I would not dwell upon them, because actually I have made one mistake at the presentation. There is only a name of Zubov, but that's not right. Of course, Inozemtsev should be there as well. We work together, we argue a lot, and who is actually the first is a question mark, but it doesn't matter. The name of the book, Siberian Boon. This was a challenge, or Siberian Blessing. 15 years ago there was a book which was called The Siberian Curse, and this was our response, because we do not intend to look for mistakes, saying that someone is to blame for what is happening in Russia, in Siberia, I'm sorry. And the situation in general is such that there were 4 ways of conquering Siberia. The first one was almost invisible. This was entrepreneurship through Novgorod, the people came from the north to Siberia through Ob. There were several settlements, but this was quite a weak wave. 3 other waves were of state nature. Criminals pushed out local peasants, and the state initiative was dominating. Then there were Komsomol constructions. Young and initiative people moved there, but still the state conducted a policy of state approach to developing territories. So it was not about efficiency, it was not about people, but about how to build more. Hence the figures about the railways and in hydrocarbon sector we have 1.2 million people per 140,000 citizens of the country. Per 75 million employees, we are fed by 1.2 million people. And this went on for 100 years, and this has to be changed. And there are 4 items which I repeat. Pay attention at the sign of the presentation. At all my books there is a bull, because there is a bear economy, there is a bull economy. Those who deal with bear economy, we don't need any association, this is an economic slang. So those who favor the falling economy and they earn on the falling economy, we are bulls, we are optimists. The economy should be rectified, it should move on. So our approach is optimistic. First, someone in the government said that we decided to allocate money, and they say it's good. But allocate for what and to whom? And how are you going to ask for this money? People think that money is allocated and then the problem is resolved. But that is not true. You take a bucket which has no bottom and switch on the water and says, I'm doing something. But this wouldn't work. And the programs from the government that are abundant, they are numerous and they are unsuccessful. So first of all, they talk about allocations, expenses. Now, what is more important? The budget in its expensive side or in its earning side? The state, there is also a state approach, well, it's a powerful projects. Ministers like this kind of approach. We think that you have to, first of all, take into consideration the earning part, the taxes, but to earn, you have to motivate business. Because administrative system is no longer efficient, and we all understand that that was not so. Historically, business is more efficient than any state structures in the economy. Another item mentioned by Vladislav. So what is Far East and Siberia? Actually, our movement to the east is the movement to the west. We need more than investments in money. We need technologies. This is illusion that our alliance with China gives us something. They will take more, I assure you, because their strategy is more precise and more proper. They will take what they need, but what will they give? China gave no new technology within the last 20 years. They copy everything. But you might develop relationships with those who invent these technologies. We need investments, private investments in the first place, investments which bring about new technologies, including the management system. Now, Elena Mikhailova mentioned item number 4, and it is there in our book. We have to specify relationships between federation and regions, not only in the area of budget, but in the area of institutions. Who is responsible? Who takes decisions? I have an example here when the solution is taken in Moscow, and it's a blind alley, and the solution taken locally may be pretty effective. So I was the first elected governor of Siberia. That's why I share all your suspicions, all your hints, or all your guesses. And I'm absolutely convinced that the democratic institutions constitute one of the chief resources of the society development. In 1995, it was a difficult time, but after a lengthy recession, so the first economic growth was registered in Krasnoyarsk Krai. One more thing. Now we are filled with information, and the information is so abundant because everybody is concerned with what happens now. And actually, probably our topic is a little bit away from current projects, from current problems. Not to me. We have to move on, and we have to resolve these tasks. Now, Vadim is political economist, an expert of the international issue, and I am rather a bookkeeper. I am an economist. So the first part of our book is setting rules, attempt to attract attention to something new, to a new approach of the resolution of Siberian problems and Russia in general. But now we concretize our research and show how you can be more efficient in developing Siberia, Russia in general. And this is Siberia. On the left, a total number of population, 25 million people. China, for comparison. In the second part of our study, we were more specific. We divided Siberia into blocks. You can't develop a territory with one approach. For each block, you need your own approach. The north, for instance. If ice thawing will be sustainable, then evidently the North Sea route will play. Would be important, but so far this is not the case. Well, we don't have here Western Siberia with its oil, because this is a separate problem, and this is more or less productive. But starting from Kemerovo coal for the railway, and Eastern Siberia, where only oil fields are being developed. This is the problem territory. Siberia was always divided into Western Siberia, Eastern Siberia, and Far East. Now the Baikal region is singled out because it's a problem region. Far East and Eastern and Western Siberia feel better than the Baikal area, meaning the territory around Baikal Lake. Lower, I put down Mongolia just to show that there are only 3 million people there. And this is a region which is similar by natural resources and by population to what we call the Baikal area and Eastern Siberia, and they have found their own solution. So, well, making these blocks, we understand that approaches are to be different, and this is our proposal. These are threats and challenges. The key element of Siberian development is Trans-Siberian railway line. It bypasses Mongolia. Below, well, I said that the threats and challenges. So the Central Asia is here. They bypass us with supplies to China. Gas goes directly from Uzbekistan to China. They are our competitors. If you do not take decisions quickly, a competitor comes in and creates a problem for us. These two green points are Mongolia, and they have only 2 oil fields, and they are developed smartly. That's copper. It's not oil. It's copper. One of them is copper, and it works already, and it gives profit, brings profit to the budget and to everybody who is connected with it. And our copper fields, Udakan, in the Baikal area, where 2 million people live here, 3 million. So this field already feeds Mongolia, and Mongolia, by the way, is one of the speedily developed country in the world, about 20% per year, and they pay money to the budget for the license. They were not afraid of one thing which we are afraid of. They are not afraid that efficient managers from abroad would be managing these fields, and foreigners would invest money. They were not afraid of it. So it is profitable for those who invested money, and it's profitable for Mongolia. On the left, you see the coal mine, Udakan field is enormous in size, and open works were supposed to be done by nuclear explosion. And this was also considered by Andrei Sakharov, and this was planned. But till now, for 11 years, the license was given. Nothing was done. The license now is obtained by the structure which is led by Rostechnology. Rostechnology was not made for dealing with national resources. So, see, for 11 years nothing was done, and Mongolia for 4 years launched the field. If they launch another field, money is allocated, and Russian railway should build a railway in Tuva, coal in Tuva. So this is Mongolian vector, 200 kilometers to transport this coal, and from Tuva to Kuragina, about 500 kilometers. Then you have to bypass Krasnoyarsk, Krai, Irkutsk Oblast, and Mongolia, and in the port you have to compete. But it has already been there, 200 kilometers brought from Mongolia, and when we consider different situations, we see that our approach, our view is not constructive. So Mongolia passes us by in this issue. Now, far east to far east, it has to be able to cooperate with Americans, Canadians, Japanese, and Southern Korea directly. Not necessarily with China. Nothing much will happen with China, but technologies and experience, yes. In Alaska, of course, they have independent court and self-governance. And they also have stabilization fund in Alaska. By the way, the same is done in Mongolia to attract population. This is a good approach. But Australia and Alaska are mentioned here as potential competitors, because we compete with them by our products, and they're quite successful in the mining area. I mean Australia, which supplies ore, coal to the Far East region, to China and to Japan. And Alaska is our potential competitor in hydrocarbons. You have to understand it and you have to be ready for it. But actually, the hydrocarbon market, the situation has changed with the appearance of the shale gas. 4 years ago, we were too connived at it, but now this is a real threat to our economy. And there is also a marble gas, which is the gas which is endless in its capacities. It's everywhere, next to Japan, for instance, and they develop new technologies. This is the gas which is located at the bottom of the sea in a concentrated form, and Japanese develop corresponding technologies. And when Japanese do something like that, you have to be vigilant. This will not happen soon, but with the shale gas, also everybody thought that it would not take place soon enough, but it happens. So there are threats and there are challenges. Every project should be considered as a threat or as a challenge. What happened with the shale? What has happened with the shale? You see, this project was stopped for the shale development. It was just stopped because we do not have corresponding technologies, and multi-million expenses were simply stopped. Probably you should invest your money into getting more oil and gas from the existing fields, make more processing than transporting for processing. These are the questions which are to be discussed. This is a geopolitical romanticism. Sounds nice, isn't it? Well, we understand the situation in the United States and Japan, but what about Northern and Southern Korea? Yesterday I received information that the joint language is developed in Northern and Southern Korea. They developed a dictionary, and it really means that the topic of the unification of these two different regions of the same people. There are traditions and superstitions, experience of other countries, like for instance the unification of GDR and FRG. At first it was euphoric, but now Federal Republic of Germany says that they spent a lot to support the level of the Eastern Germany. Such risks are there. But historically speaking, probably the unification of Northern and Southern country cannot be stopped. These Northern Korea, they have a low level of life, but they like to work. And another part in the South, they have capital, and they also love to work. We should work with the both. Why our preference is to Chinese and to Japanese? Why shouldn't we hold our projects with Northern and Southern Koreans, which are going to be united anyway? The capital and modern system of management and corresponding criteria of assessment of the decisions that are taken If we do all this, we will make efficient solutions when we modernize Siberia. And before completing this part, I would like to say the following. There are certain things which we actually believe, take for granted. For instance, that demography is better in Siberia, Chinese are moving on, and employ is not enough. But experience shows the mirror picture. Chinese incoming is not very big, they have their own purposes, but they do not plan to build pulp and paper plants. And the labor force, well, we should be ready. I don't know if you noted that Vladislav paid your attention to the fact that you should bring in labor force. If in Tobolska oil processing plant is building, so half of the workforce is brought in, although this is Western Siberia and there are so many specialists around. And this is a positive example when regions decide what to do with their resources. There is a stipulation in the constitution about joint projects, solutions taken at the level of federation and the level of the regions. Now, if it is something profitable, the project is profitable, decision is taken at the federation level.
Возникла идея, что освобождать и назначать без...
When the idea round to appoint governors, I gave up to me that was well known that I would resign if this should happen for a simple reason. You cannot govern your territory if you don't have the money and you don't manage the personnel. And when you're there, you see much nicer what is going on in the law enforcement. And since we went in close cooperation with the leader of the police, and there were critical situations when we worked together, but if we didn't have that, I'm not sure what would have been. At that time, it was joint responsibility about issuing licenses. And the agreement was that actually they gave me the right to sign a license to start developing the richest gold of the Olympics, Olympiada deposit. Company Artsy, that was the name of it at the time. Can you imagine? It's just several people, like partnership. Artsy is the Russian word for partnership. And I took a risk and I signed this license, and the minister further signed. The risk was certainly high. As of today, this is the most effective enterprise in Russia about producing gold, the biggest, one of the best effective, which now reaches the level that they want to, the amount of gold that they produce, how much was that? Was it 8 or 12 years? As of year 3, they already exceeded all the indicators. And this partnership was transformed into the Joint Stock Society, Polus, and now it is third biggest enterprise in my region. So you can do it. 4 points I wish to draw attention to. First, the simplified cross, horizontal and vertical. All of the decisions are usually taken in the horizontal manner. It's redistribution. Somebody buys shares knowing that this works. We do not have the vertical mentality, vertical thinking, so that we should say produce more at every deposit, that we should go for reprocessing, that we should go for innovation. It's easier to buy assets from somebody else rather than come up with something that you invented on your own. And to invent this horizontal thinking this is one of the bricks that stands in our way, I would take a simple decision to ban asset acquisition of the working enterprises to all state enterprises, at least 1% of state-owned property. This is the way to push it across. When the leader of the largest state corporation comes to the Prime Minister and says, look, we invented iPhone on both sides. No, he says, they didn't invent it. It was a private company that invented that. And they just bought the assets, so they don't even hold majority controlling stock. They just assume this glory and, okay, hydrocarbons. Look at this risk about this South Stream, and it's doubtful whether it will be implemented. The question is, why at all are we building from our own money, either with loans or with investing our budgets into it? Nobody has any doubts that the power of Siberia, this gas pipeline for China, and it is sure that Rosneft is supplying oil to China, receiving donations from the budget. What is it about tax reduction? It is a subsidy, which is not obvious. Why can't they export it? Okay, we sell them the produce, please buy it. Please export it. If you want to build a gas pipeline, oil pipeline, or if you want to build a factory to process oil, okay, whatever. Anyway, let us raise this question and let us discuss it, and you would say, okay, it doesn't work. Privately owned business, I already mentioned it. And again, foreign capital, technologies and management. And the last point I wish to make, well, you know, conformism, it's a very convenient thing when we all are like-minded people, when we share the same perspective. But it's very dangerous. It works today, but it's very dangerous tomorrow. I like so much more the approach that was professed by Gilliff Ibsen in one of his plays. The majority are always wrong. New ideas are generated by a minority, and the effective ideas might be only when they go against the grain of the existing practices, generally accepted, convenient conformism. Our application for going for Siberia, Vladislav and I work on this here. We say we are ready to challenge. Prove to us that this is not so. But to walk a well-beaten path, it would lead us nowhere. We should look for new approaches. Valery Zubov, you know, you really made my friends so much in love with you. Vladislav Inozemtsev and Sergei Petrov, they're just delighted about you. And Yura and I are also have fallen in love with you, and we want to see you. If they allow us to remain as a school, then you will be our excellent expert. Thank you very much. Please sign your book for me. Well, you know, I'm very proud that you said these words, because there are people who are very close to me. They are my friends, and most importantly, they're like-minded people. Both of them, as I think, represent the better part of Russia, and that I'm just sitting next to them. I think I was just lucky. They don't think you're just sitting next to them. They think that you're a source of inspiration for them, and I'm sure that this audience is also inspired by these people too. So your questions and answers and your comments, if you have any, please. The second row. Andrei Alexandrovich. Without your permit. It's Siberia. So shall we begin with Bashkiria? Please. My name is Azamat. I'm from Bashkortostan. Thank you very much for your presentation. The question is, it's not so much about Siberia. In the presentation by Valery Mikhailovich, he said that democratic institutions are guarantee of development. Thus, the question, I would like to focus your attention at this. Many People hope that this year we shall have competitive election in a number of regions, when they will be electing governors of the regions. And Bashkortostan was one of such regions, and as it's well known, in the Republic we had hopes for competitive election after the party Syric Fourth, which was led by Vyacheslav Leonidovich, when they put forward former Premier Valery Zubov. But that was interesting that on the last day when they registered candidates, the party convened a congress, they revoked his candidates, and in this way competitive election never took place. Thus, my question, and I suppose I'm not alone in asking this question, and everybody lives in my republic, why did it happen? How would you like to comment on this? And why should we talk about democratic institutions if, in point of fact, we so rapidly and cynically are cutting them short? Come on, elections are yours. Well, this is a fundamental mistake. The very fact that we, as we pursue the policy of stability and stabilization, we should always support stability with innovation. If things have been pre-decided and the result is known before the election, and we know in terms of governor's election we know who will be elected, then the risk is we might miss a good idea. Businessmen will always tell you a number of good examples, and you know that the most outlandish ideas in business and technology turned out to be the revolutionary ideas. Say Balmer, when they brought in this telephone, Microsoft, the most innovative firm, and they say, look, for this iPhone there is no market. I suppose it was the greatest mistake he committed, and this was it. But these mistakes are being continued. Why is it that we decided that another logic works in management decisions as a whole? For example, as we elect our government. In our book, we give an example how in Russia went to the east, exploring the east, and how North America went west. You can look at Ferguson, his book was translated Civilization. He steps how South and North America was explored and what different results turned out. When they crossed those famous Rocky Mountains, a number of people died there in California, which was a region like Trans-Baikal region. It's California, then it was just in a very different manner. The book that's written, but those people carried with them, and on the road they would make their choice. They would think when they come there, somebody should be responsible for something. Well, that would be the mayor. They elected them on the way, on the road. The most important thing they brought to North America, the people who got to travel, who reached their destination, two fundamental things, as I said. It brought the spirit of entrepreneurship, but that was brought to Siberia, because indeed, with those was undertaken who were ready to take the risk. And secondly, they took with them, at those times, that was quite a democratic institution. They brought them with them. So that was a mistake. But this is convenient when you know what if somebody else wins? The experience of the early 1990s when I was elected tells me that it may happen this way or other way. But on average, it turns out better when people are elected. For example, I ran against a competition, look, in Krasnoyarsk, where they had an excellent choice. They were electing, that year, 1993, when I was elected, they elected the city mayor, the chairman of the legislature of the city, presidential rep, entrepreneur who was an engineer, hero of socialist labor, director of a big plant. I happen to be among them, and another odd guy. This happens. He was old, but he gathered 0.5%. But in 2002, Krasnoyarsk could elect, I will tell you this, that was a true election, but they chose between Loponin, who became governor, chairman of the legislature, who enjoys great authority across Russia as a lawyer, as a former senator, doctor of PhD in law, mayor of the city of Krasnoyarsk, who proved that he's very good about the economy. He was a mayor, and then Sergei Glaziev. That was the choice. Anything from the left to the right. In Krasnoyarsk, still people say that they make the right guess by choosing Loponin. And nowadays the election is run across a different manner. So those who stand to win, certainly we should pursue this idea. He would say, who is to blame? We are all of us to blame, in the same degree. It depends upon each of us. The president, or say the leader of the presidential administration, traveled to Russia and said, let's revoke this candidature. Certainly not. Certainly not. Firstly, quite a democratic organization. They adopted one decision, then all of a sudden, in a very non-democratic manner, they did the other way. But it's not that administration of Bashkiria or in Moscow. No. They were members of the civic platform who took this decision. So there are things which the government is standing to be responsible for, and we also share our own responsibility. So there is a certain element of unpredictability about the election, but there is a chance. Small comment about Mr. Zakharov and Bashkir election. In this case, I have to say that I am the chair of the Supreme Council of this party, Civic Force, Civic Power. This is the party that is developing ideology and conceptual program. The bureau was headed by Mr. Ryavkin, who until recently put forward the candidate of the ex-prime minister. Later on, what happened was misunderstanding with Mr. Ryavkin and the presidential administration. The party Congress revoked the candidature was pretty much fast, and Mr. Ryavkin, what I really appreciate him for, later resigned. And in autumn, the party will be either abolished or will be reformatted. So, to a certain extent, that was the pressure that was put on them by the federal government, federal authority. Siberia, Evgeny Mitrofanov from Siberia, from Novosibirsk. My question to you is, you just focused it. Question to Mr. Inozemtsev, but Moscow cannot live without Siberia and the other way around. Why Siberia can't do without Moscow? This is question number one. Is that what we have to sell? Question number two. What do you think about this idea of bringing together all the Siberian during the existing federation to create some kind of Siberian republic to increase our political weight? Thank you very much for this mad question. Look, what I want to tell you, why Moscow and Siberia can't live without one another. For the first time, look, certainly you can say that there are some things you can sell, and Valery Mikhailовich is more optimistic. But today there is a huge infrastructure in place about delivering this. There are European markets. We have, our work with Asian countries is not yet obvious. Supply to China, 2013. This is something that hasn't been done yet. Again, to develop the infrastructure, we need huge amounts of money. So I'm sure that in the conflict between Moscow and Siberia, when Siberia, say, should secede from Russia, this region will not be able to develop because any integration is better today than being disunited. Let's look at Ukraine, and we're keeping an eye on this. Despite our political actions, we'll see how successful it will be once it ties its relations with Russia, or rather, when Russia severs its ties. I'm not sure they will survive, so I'm absolutely convinced that further movement ahead could be done together. At least this is the way it should be. Anything may happen. We cannot say anything about this, but anyways, I think that if we work together, we shall be more efficient. As to the ideas of Siberian Republic, well, look. I'll put it this way. Nowadays, we have Siberian Federal District. We see Western Siberia, Far Eastern Federal District. I don't overestimate the importance of some regions, but I would think that much more important would be an objective to organize the web of interaction between them. If so, nowadays all regional leaders travel to Moscow to ask for subsidies from other regions, we should turn it the other way around, so that Moscow should be financed only the projects that work in several regions, so that the regions do not compete for federal money, and instead should bring together and cooperate in major investment projects. Because certainly this is turning them into macro regions. This is something that is needed. But it should not be driven by administrative, it should be driven by economic motives. So our best experience of the 1990s association and several agreements, I'm sure these associations and this interaction is much more important than administrative interaction between several constituent entities. I'll use a couple of words here. From Krasnoyarsk to Novosibirsk, the distance is much greater than from Moscow to St. Petersburg. A plane from Krasnoyarsk to Kemmer, I'm not sure whether they fly there, or Tomsk they fly or not. This is a problem about communication. Very often, to travel to another city in Siberia, we have to travel to Moscow and then back to another city. Just look how a Siberian agreement worked in the 1990s. That was serial and without any administrative leverages, many questions were resolved at the time. Khabarovsk. Vasily Kropotkin from Khabarovsk. Thank you very much for your presentation. I looked the school travels to Khabarovsk, and I would be very happy if you were invited there so that people from our region should listen to you. My question is here. Much is being done about turn towards the east, and a special ministry has been set up, and the program where most costs for transport, which, as you think, modernization of BAM and Transsib, as you think, are not very profitable. But still, Valery Zubov said that most people are always wrong, but the minority are right. You quoted somebody. How these ideas could be brought across to the government so that the government should hear it, or at least should borrow some points from your book and practice. About theory, minority-majority, in the book that is unnamed book that we wrote with Alexei Makarkin, we discussed one point, and one of the points was such that the minority, they're always in opposition, and the opposition, this is just like pain in your body. It gives you a signal that the disease is coming. If it were not for pain, we would not know that we would be sick, we would die. It is pain that shows that something needs to be done. If there is no opposition in society, if nobody listens to the minority, this is a fundamental problem about society's development. About getting the message across, there are two ways to get the information across to the government. First of all, when the government is elected, because in theory, you can vote in many different ways. In reality, election day is when you want to travel to the dacha and to travel on a Sunday and to vote well, a number of other circumstances, but you could do it. You could go and vote. And what's your opinion? And the second way, which, as I hoped, we will never reach it, never again use it in this country, when people disregard it all and they just went out, express our outrage in different forms. There are two ways, I don't know. People, mass media, we can see how they can fail, and we've seen that is not the case. But most importantly, just morally, this is the point I was raising, and repeat myself, maybe you might listen to it too. Don't be upset, don't be shy about communicating with like-minded people. Natalia Zakharova, you now have the floor. Microphone, please. Okay, good day. I didn't raise my hand, but okay. Well, I have a question to Mr. Inozemtsev. The agreement to set up the Eurasian Union, signed in May between Russia, Kazakhstan, and Belarus. I would like to hear your say on this. What is it? Is it return to the Soviet Union, or if not, do you think in a modern situation, is it possible or not? The return to the Soviet Union. Well, listen, I'll try to be brief. It doesn't seem to me it is return to the Soviet Union, because it's impossible. You heard a presentation by Natalia Danishyn, who spoke about it. The time is gone, and in many ways this is impossible. What is this union about? It's a certain attempt to create an illusion that Russia is gaining some allies. We have this, Putin gives Freudian slip of the tongue, that Russia doesn't enter any unions 3 weeks after they signed this agreement. But in my view, this is doesn't lead anywhere, which would lead that Russia will lose to Kazakhstan and Belarus, because today Kazakh tax is 31% lower than in Russia, and management quality is much better in governance. Actually, now we get a huge market access for countries through Central Asia, which will mean declining foreign investment to Russia. Belarus is much more industrialized than Russia and will supply us agricultural and industrial produce, so we'll get competitors who are much better prepared than we, and like as a payment for some political illusion of their loyalty. Therefore, for Russia, in my view, it doesn't promise anything. I was telling you that today we live in a time of marine economy, and what I wanted to say is that surely, if you're interested in this, you may have read or seen references to a paper by a well-known British geopolitician Mackinder. He spoke about Heartland, who in the early 20th century who said, those who control Central Asia, they control the global poverty. And Dugin and others, they are promoting these ideas. Like one very simple example, Mackinder wrote his paper in 1904. This year, so 100 years passed since the beginning of the World War I. And well, they built 775,000 kilometers of railroads from 1887 to 1914, in 34 years. Mackinder thought that the importance of the geographical situation of the Central Asia, thought that it is safe from attack from the sea, and that could be developed through building continental railways. That was a huge mistake, because from 1913 till 2013, the railways, their length declined by 6,000 kilometers. This is something that does not develop. America dismantled half of its railroads because they do not need them. And we build new railroads into Central Asia, into geopolitical direction which would lead us nowhere. The EU is a unique integration association in the world because it brings together amazing countries. Russia tries to bring together Kazakhstan, Kyrgyz that have no access to sea. The only Eastern European country that has no access to sea is Belarus, and the only Transcaucasian country that has no access to sea, Armenia. It's a cul-de-sac in the order of 5. Welcome to the 21st century. May I add to this? As to railroads, as it was already mentioned, and I use it to transport in Transsib, first of all, oil, ores, and coal. Coal gives losses, 30% losses. The more we transport coal, the more costs we accumulate. This is just to add to what was said before.
Let's move on. A question from Ingushetia. Are you fond of Siberia? I'm Timur Zakov from Ingushetia. I'm not exactly an Ingush. I grew up in the Far East and in a famous oil town, and a significant part of my life. I went to school there, and I grew up there, and so I'm really looking at myself as an integral part of Siberia. I don't know, in some mysterious way, North Caucasus are linked with Siberia, and it's manifested in a strange way, and one of such manifestations is that the first agent of president in North Caucasus was Mr. Khloponin. And now, when the sphere of influence is divided by the two ministers, it was headed by another former governor of Krasnoyarsk Krai, Sergei Kuznetsov. And I think you also have some relation to North Caucasus, or at least you need to have that idea. So I'm also a little bit surprised why people from Siberia are believed to be most efficient experts for the development of North Caucasus. Perhaps the reason is that those managers who succeeded in Siberia are quite capable of promoting North Caucasus. You know, Siberia, compared with the European Russia, is the most Russian ethnic territory. But on the other hand, it's a great international territory. No international or ethnic prejudices, or at least much less than in other territories. The reason is that Siberia had a lot of settlers who came to Siberia and started their life from scratch there, and that's the advantage of Siberia. The other reason is, I think, and I'm not talking about that specific situation, but Mr. Khloponin, prior to being appointed as governor of Krasnoyarsk Krai, was the CEO of Norilsk Nickel. And then he was appointed the governor of Taimyr, and only after that he was appointed the governor of Krasnoyarsk Krai. And Mr. Kuznetsov was always with him. And the scope of responsibilities when you manage such major territories is great. Krasnoyarsk Krai is the number of hydropower plants, a lot of major manufacturing facilities, defense industry facilities that make virtually all communication satellites. It's nuclear industry, it's agriculture. In the middle of 1990, in Krasnoyarsk Krai, they produced more grain than the Altai Krai put together. And Krasnoyarsk is a very cultural center. And there was the only museum in Europe that was awarded 2 times by the Council of Europe. And So the scope of responsibilities really teach managers, but when they move to North Caucasus, and I really spent a lot of time in Petigorsk, and my mother lives in Lermontov, another town next to Petigorsk, but we still have to live and see how they will succeed in North Caucasus. Your question, please, dear colleague. Please introduce yourself. I'm Aldar Zhostran from Zabaikalsky Krai. And Mr. Zubov spoke of Zabaikal, and we have a lot of minerals, a lot of oil, copper, and the lion's share of uranium is produced in Zabaikalia. But our living standards are quite low. We rely on subsidies from the center. So my question is, when will finally the state turn to face all our problems, and those problems are addressed? Or they will wait when oil and gas are exhausted, only then we'll switch to the production of oil, gold and copper. My answer would be twofold. Your starting point is not correct. You don't have to wait when the state turns to face your problems. You should start doing that on your own. You don't have to waste time trying to talk your opponents into taking your problem seriously. And really, we should advertise our strength points, and we should demonstrate to the world that we are not very few. In the Zabaikalia region, there is a new governor, quite young person. I don't think that it's quite hard for you to have an interview with that gentleman and ask him why we cannot do what they did in Mongolia. You should have some air on television. You should write articles in media. You should make the authorities turn to you. And the Mongolians showed us that it could be done quite quickly, and we can learn from their lesson. Maria, your question, please. Thank you for the opportunity to ask a question. I'm Maria Gurlova from St. Petersburg. In my capacity, I am a sinologist. I'm going to say that the Russian economy is to adopt the idea that China is the only partner in the Middle East. We can agree with that, but what I say about the attraction of investments and raising capitals in Siberia and Russian Far East, and if my understanding is correct, you say that we should really change our status as a mineral exporting country. But at the same time, you say that all our neighbors are interested in receiving Russian exports of minerals. And if so, then there is a question, what can we offer to foreign investors in Siberia and the Russian Far East? Perhaps it's quite logical, it would be quite logical to develop Russian Far East as the shipping logistic hubs. So China started by opening free economic zones in coastal areas because it's more feasible in terms of economy. Thank you very much. I think I'll start, and I would agree with a number of your points. Today, what we offer is mostly minerals, raw materials, and the situation will continue for quite some time. But the situation is that we need to think of profit-oriented methods. We should be more efficient and not to be lured into mega projects. That is the case now. We should really learn from the Mongolian lessons and raise investments from foreigners. But speaking of China, Chinese would never move their manufacturing facilities to the Russian territory, so we need to talk to those countries which are prepared to do so it's Japan, South Korea. Perhaps we should allow Western companies to produce, to extract minerals in Siberia, perhaps on special terms, and perhaps we should really ask them to establish deeper conversions, high-level conversions enterprises, providing them some tax reliefs or other privileges. And I fully agree with you that it can be started from the coastal areas, from logistic hubs. And in China, they had an advantage of having a great number of cheap labor, which is not the case in Siberia and the Russian Far East. And we should see how we can replace cheap labor with cheap minerals and raw materials. So again, the sequence is like this: ports first, then foreign investors, processing of minerals, and its shipment to the South Pacific areas. When we make a statement that we should really place an emphasis on a private business rather than on state investments, we fully realize that that's the position, which tells us that we are unaware what kind of business will be profitable and beneficial. It's up to the businesses themselves to make their choice. So we should really proceed from that assumption. Nobody knew, nobody could expect that one of the high-tech areas, California, would start developing as a mineral-producing region, because people first came there to produce gold, to extract gold, silver. And we were built only one road to Siberia. In California, 4 roads were built. And Stanford University was one of the establishments that made a great contribution to build that railway. So we should really proceed from the assumption that we don't know for sure what would really happen. But for the time being, what should we be afraid of being rich in minerals? We can really make use of it in a different way, more efficient way. So those are the two positions, and I think those stands are quite important, and the business is quite conscious of what efficiency means. And as for ports and logistic hubs, and I think people from the Caucasus, Mr. Raudinov, if I'm not mistaken, has already started doing the logistic hub business there. High School of Economics, please, your question. I'm Valery Zubov from the Leningrad region. Vyacheslav Leonidovich, you said that you are not the supporter of federalism, but you are talking about that, and as for the regional policies, that is aimed at supporting weak regions and is linked to securing the support of voters. And resources is something that is the subject of bargain between the federal center and regions, because economically strong regions demand they have more political autonomy, and the center does not want it, because it so happens that such strong centers in such places, such strong regions, people do not vote for the united Russia. So I wonder if economic freedom can be achieved without the political freedom, although I can really predict your answer, and still I would like you to answer that. Thank you very much for a well-articulated question and point. I agree. You are talking about the right things, and the redistribution now is in favor of poor regions. And that's, in my view, is a dangerous trend, because it's here when we see the greatest degree of loyalty to the authorities, and I spoke on that account many times, and I believe that if in republics of North Caucasus, please don't get offended, and the number of Povolsha republics, Volga regional republics, if they didn't vote for the United Russia so unanimously, United Russia wouldn't be the ruling party here. So the subsidies and the donations to those regions do not only exhaust the budget, but it also ruins the political and economic efficiency of the entire system. As for the question if economic autonomy would guarantee political autonomy, it's a complex question, and I'm not certain that that's a must, because a number of federal models are well balanced, and they provide both a level of free economic and political activities, and which is seen in the United States, where individual states can even pass their own legislations, although the taxation system may different and penalties are different, although all the states have equal rights. So I don't think that that's the only precondition when economic independence would be translated in some opposition to the center. So it's not a must, and I believe that from my perspective, the current political elite has become so inadequate that we cannot rely on any positive changes under the current order, and everything that we write is not designed for the current leaders. Well, okay, let's move on. I'm Olga Fadeva from West Siberia, from Yugra. Thank you very much for such an interesting talk. And I would like to make a number of comments. In the civic society of Yugra, there are always some displeasure with the unjust redistribution of cash flows, and they would like the local government to pay more attention to that disparity, and the roadmap of the development of that region features the enlargement of regional aviation. And I would like to ask you the following question. What's your attitude to the fact that big business imposes a great impact and influence on the authorities, even sometimes circumventing law? So what's your vision of that issue? We cannot have positive attitudes towards such disparities. And it's not only the influence and pressure on the authorities. The fact is that big business is less and less efficient, and the bans on to operate in the shelf regions and in other deposits to everybody, all companies except for Rosneft and Gazprom, ruins our economy, and the merge between big business and the authorities is very threatening. Big business is really is based on mineral extractions, on low-level conversion products, and it's less efficient. And as for the development of regional aviation, well, the positive things are quite obvious. And say in Alaska, more than 10,000 small aircraft are registered. And in our case, we don't have to build major aircraft hubs from the budget. We can think of how we can accommodate the regional local aviation, but private business should help it. Should the government wanted to do so, it can be again subsidized from the budget, so major airlines would love to have part of such business. But in your case, if it's not subsidies that would build airports and airlines, but at least if subsidies can help to pay compensations for non-efficient routes and flights, it would be great for the expansion and development of local and regional aviation. Well, I think Vladislav has already said it all, but on my part, I can only say that I didn't like your question, and if you compare the pressure of business today and the pressure of big business on the authorities in the times when I was in power, there are no parallels. In 1999, 3 oligarchs stopped my re-election without much effort. As for the coordination and cooperation, in the recent days, we all understand how important regional aviation is for such territories as ours. And I really took some lessons of flying, and in the vicinity of Molokova, we are thinking of building a small airport. I actually jumped with a parachute myself, and today big business does not play that great role in taking government-based decisions as it seems to be. Certainly, with the help of Moscow, big business can have some solutions to their problems in Siberia, although there are some regions that are strong enough to oppose that. But in general, by and large, big business exercises quite a weak influence now on the decision-making in the country. And look how MPs from the State Duma vote. There are some lobbies and MPs from business, but counter business interest decisions are taken on a regular basis, and it's seen in the budget items too. So from my perspective, and I think that the oligarch influence on the government is weakened, but the fact that big business was separated from the power is a minus, and we can really argue about that. A question from St. Petersburg. I'm Konstantin Krylov from St. Petersburg. My next question is about small or regional aviation. It's great, but even in this case, they need fuel and major projects, 8-lane highways, bridges. Who will pay for such projects? We make no plans. And we're not going to build any 8-lane highways. The thing is that each economic effort is to be efficient. And if just 30,000 people live in an area, a paved road will be enough. A 2-lane paved road will be enough. We should really proceed from reasonable efficiency. Shaev, the former presidential agent, said that Russia had to build a bridge to Sakhalin Island just because it had to. We strongly reject such arguments. The French, until 1984, ran ferry connection to Rendezvous Island, but then they calculated that if a commercial bridge was built, and it would pay back for 8 years, and they did it, and it paid back 3 times. So that's the way how we act in our territories. We don't need an 8-lane highway between Blagoveshchensk and Khabarovsk. Such projects are to be regarded as the last term projects. Let us enlarge our population, build new ports, logistic hubs, and if we succeed, then we will think of 8-lane roads. Another question from the High School of Economics. Nikolai Malchko from the Tyumen region. My question goes to former Governor Mr. Zubov, and some introduction to my question. It's quite known now that Russia is experiencing economic downturn, and the mineral extraction tax is withdrawn from the region. It's in the center now, so we lost a lot in the Tyumen region. Our deficit is 35 billion now. So my question is as follows. Will the institution of governors change? Because it's for governors there are only two options: gradually move to a recession that is happening in the Tyumen region, or the governor will conflict with the federal center and will try to safeguard the interests of the region. Formally, we are not in the recession yet, although we understand it only too well that the economy is not growing. So what is the governor able to do? Approximately in the year 2000, in 2000 and 2001, a formula was incorporated into the tax code when all taxes are divided by half, 50% to the regional budget and 50% to the federal budget. That formula was dropped off later on, and the ratio is 37 per 33 in favor of the federation. Now in the regions we don't have funds. We don't have enough payroll funds. What investment project can you think of? How can you support businessmen through tax reliefs, since the regions cannot use these tax relief instruments no longer? And based on the assessment made by the government, the characteristics, features of the budget for 2016-2017, I know that indebtedness of the regions now is 1.8 trillion rubles. Sometimes they speak even of 2 trillion rubles. And given the fact that it applies to about 30 or 40 regional budgets, consolidated budgets. Governors have no room for maneuver, no flexibility. Now the problem is how to fill that gap. And it's not just a one-time gap. That's the gap that has been accumulated for many years, and that gap is growing. And unless we address the gap, no governor will have financial instruments. As for the mineral extraction tax, it has always been federal, but there is another special feature which reflects the general trend. The mineral extraction tax suggests is supposed to be increased while import duties are reduced. I'm talking about raw materials. So by rising mineral extraction tax for all the companies who receive those products for processing companies will increase costs. And by decreasing the import-export duties, we make privileges and preferences for the foreign users of the Russian raw materials. And that's a very strange logic that runs counter to the efficiency method. You, please, at the end of the table, introduce yourself, please. I'm Stanislav Avramenko from the Rostov-on-Don. Valery Mikhailovich, based on what you said, my understanding is that it's hard to speak of modernization in Siberia by their own forces, and it's not China who we should speak of. It's mostly Canada or United States, but from the top we can hear the opposite story. It's China that is in focus. You said that there are some changes under the current regime. And you said that those changes are minor, and Siberia will stay to be a region which will be just the resource base, and no investments will go there. I wonder how long such a situation can last. we cannot speak of the change of power, but how much time we still have or for how long the Siberia may last, and perhaps after all it's the Siberia that will produce a revolution to start the liberation of the country. That's one of the main assumptions of the book. Because we proved that in Siberia we have much more prerequisites for positive changes. And so my brief answer is yes, Siberia is the best region for changes. Taking advantage of what you've said, I would like to clarify one point about China. You said it just very briefly, but that's a very important point. At some time, Mikhail Zadornov, who we met yesterday, and I, when we were MPs in the State Duma, we noticed that we were about 10 years late with the AIDS solutions, but China, Iran. So we were just ignoring the subject, but in 2000-2001, AIDS and HIV became a problem in this country with very high growth. And in economic terms, we tried to draw everyone's attention to the fact that if we fail to change the situation, then the whole healthcare budget will be spent for HIV and AIDS medications. No measures were taken, and what happened? The majority of the experts just left the country. That topic kept silent in this country. You cannot see any stories, any coverages in the media about that disease. I spoke in New York. I made this presentation in New York. My English was bad. And I made a mistake speaking in English, but from the room, from the audience, they told me to speak Russian because the majority of the audience was Russian, and it was in New York. So, in the framework of that topic, or just to explore those areas, the delegation from the Krasnoyarsk region visited China. And there was a question that is not discussed in this country at all. We know that drug addiction is incurable. It's a dependence, and drug users have a lot of chances that they will never cure. In the West, they found some option. Certainly, they cannot cure drug addicts in the West too, but the problem is how to socialize those people. I'm not certain that it's politically correct to say it, so I will stop short of doing that. Please find out what I'm talking about. So in Russia, those methods were never borrowed, they're never practiced, but in China they did. And when visiting China, I realized that the Chinese authorities were and are very much more progressive than Russian counterparts. And responding to my question, how come you did that? Because there was a strong opposition in China too. And in China, healthcare officials and police are most rivals. And you know what they said to me? So one of the experts and founders of that treatments, he said that China is still a big country. Our per capita income is 5 to 6 times less than in the developed countries, but our population is 1.5 billion people. and China is going to play a dominating role in international relations sooner or later, so we are preparing to be fit into this role, and that is the reason we need to really borrow and practice internationally proven methods which prove to be efficient. So in China, they very clearly realize what their interests are, but still they are not embarrassed to borrow best methods, best practices, starting from manufacture and all the way to AIDS or HIV treatment. So responding to your question, when situation will change in Siberia, North Caucasus, our topic is Siberia, but it's just a pretext to discuss all Russia questions and problems. And we should not be, we will never lose Pushkin, Dostoevsky, or Tchaikovsky and Gagarin, so we should not be so self-conscious, and that's the effects of how great our country was. But we should not be shy of borrowing best practices, learning from lessons of other countries. So we have to be guided by really the best what is available in the world. Our people should buy best cars, and our management and governance systems are to be well fit into the global standards. Dear colleagues, I cannot allow any more questions since the time is up. I think that this session was quite a success, and it was shared by two experts. And looking at your reaction, I noticed that even those people who live far away from Siberia were interested in listening those stories. I used to live in Blagodeshchensk in Amur region, and I would say that that topic will inevitably be on the agenda even for those who live in the Rostov-on-Don. Siberia is all Russia topic, and I'm really pleased that we had the pleasure of the company of the two experts, and I think the school will continue elaborating those problems in the future. Let's thank the experts, please.